You know, we see these old black and white photos from World War II all the time, but have you ever stopped to think about what each individual soldier was actually carrying? Well, today, we're going to do just that. We're doing a deep dive into the complete standard issue kit of a Soviet soldier on the Eastern Front, from their helmet right down to their boots.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the thinking behind all the gear. Then we'll go head to toe through the uniform, check out the infantryman's arsenal, see how they carried everything, and wrap up with the tools they used for survival and communication on the front lines.
All right, first things first, let's get inside their heads. The equipment issued to the Red Army wasn't just randomly chosen. It was a direct reflection of Soviet military doctrine, which was all about preparing for a massive, brutal, grinding war of attrition.
And this quote, it just nails it. This was the guiding principle for everything. It had to be simple enough for a farm boy with almost no training to figure out. It had to be rugged enough to not break in the middle of a frozen hellscape, and most important of all, it had to be easy to produce by the millions. Function in numbers always came before comfort.
So let's see exactly how that philosophy played out in a soldier's first line of defense against the world, their uniform. Okay, so here's the basic rundown. You've got that iconic SH-40 steel helmet for protection, obviously. But everything else was about one thing: layers. You had your standard tunic, a heavy wool greatcoat, the absolutely essential padded Telegreka jacket, and of course, for the winter, the world-famous Ushanka hat and Valenki boots.
Now, the absolute foundation of the whole thing was the gymnastiorka. This was not some fancy tailored uniform. It was a simple, tough-as-nails pullover tunic, usually in a drab khaki or brown. Its design was purely about practicality, made to be churned out on a massive scale for the millions of men and women being called to fight. Now, the Telegreka, this jacket is the perfect example of that simple and rugged idea. It might just look like a basic quilted jacket, but this thing was an absolute lifesaver. It was incredibly cheap to make, surprisingly warm, and it pretty much became the symbol of the Red Army soldiers' ability to just endure and keep fighting through those unbelievable winters. And what about their feet? Well, you have the Valenki. These are traditional Russian boots made of pressed felt. In the dry, bitter cold, and deep snow, they were way warmer than standard leather boots, which would just freeze solid and lead to horrible frostbite. They were a perfect case of taking a simple, old-world design and using it to solve a modern military problem.
But of course, a soldier is a lot more than just their uniform. So let's turn to the tools of the trade, the actual weapons they carried into the fight.
The arsenal was really a mix of the old and the new. For years, the standard was the long-serving Mosin Nagant bolt-action rifle, a real relic. But as the war dragged on, submachine guns like the legendary PPSH-41 became way more common. And of course, every soldier had grenades and a bayonet for the grim reality of up-close fighting. You know, this comparison tells you the entire story of how Soviet tactics were changing. The Mosin was a classic rifle, super reliable, accurate at a distance. But in the shattered ruins of a city like Stalingrad, the sheer volume of fire you could get from a PPSH-41 with its 71-round drum mag was just king. It shows a clear shift toward aggressive, overwhelming, close-range assaults.
So, you have your weapon, you have your uniform, but how did you carry your ammo, your food, and all your other supplies? Let's take a look at their load-bearing gear, which, you guessed it, was just as minimalist.
The whole setup was just incredibly basic. A simple belt held the stuff you needed right now, ammo pouches, and maybe a small bag. A canteen, a mess tin, and a shovel were clipped on. Everything else, your spare socks, your rations, any personal items, just got thrown into a simple canvas backpack, or honestly, sometimes just a cloth sack.
And that's the thing to remember. None of this was about ergonomic design or making the soldier comfortable. Not at all. The entire system was built to be made cheaply and replaced in a heartbeat. If a soldier's gear was destroyed, you could issue them a brand new, simple set almost immediately. It was pure pragmatism on a national scale.
All right, finally, let's cover those miscellaneous but crucial items. The stuff that dealt with first aid, communication, and basic survival on the battlefield. This is pretty stark. The average soldier was issued one basic field dressing. That's it. That tells you everything you need to know, right? If you got wounded, your survival had almost nothing to do with what you carried personally. It all depended on how fast a medic could get to you.
And communication was just as bare bones. Yeah, you can forget about personal radios for the average grunt. That tech was for officers and specialized units. Down in the trenches, at the squad level, orders were passed by runners, simple hand signals, and whistles.
It worked, but it was about as basic as you can get. So, as we put it all together, it becomes incredibly clear that every single item, from the helmet to the tunic to the simple ammo pouch, it all tells the exact same story. It's the story of a nation throwing everything it had into a total war where victory was going to depend on equipping a gigantic army with gear that was, above all, reliable, functional, and available in absolutely massive numbers.